Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Oscar Buzz. Trevor here, joined by Thomas, and it is time for Sundance. So, we're gonna have a bunch of Sundance reviews coming over the next week. We saw a lot of. I watched 26 movies.
Yep, I watched 12, so there's going to be a lot of films to discuss.
There's gonna be a lot of reviews. So
yeah,
there,
strap in.
there's no strategy, no release pattern. They're just gonna dump out as soon as we get them. So there's gonna be like 2 to 3 reviews a day, for a bit here. So, anyways. Today we're talking about Handling the Undead, filmed by Thea Vistendal. It was a pretty anticipated, coming out of Norway. It is a horror film, kind of, more in tone than in genre, really. But the big reason why it was anticipated is the reunion of Renate Reinsve and Anders Danielson from one of the best movies of the decade, The Worst Person in the World.
Completely agreed.
They do not share a single scene in this.
No, that was a problem. That was definitely a problem for me. Not in the fact that it was like a reunion, then I wanted to see them together again. But it all felt kind of disparate, would be the word I'd use overall.
I would agree, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
We very much disagree on this film, and I think that you will find that this film is going to be incredibly divisive, because it's doing a very specific thing. So when you think, like, the premise is like it's a zombie film taking place in Norway, and the newly deceased awaken from their death, right? Zombies. This film is quite literally like everything that you wouldn't expect from a zombie film, really. It's whatever things you associate with the genre of zombie movie, it is just not. Aside from that, there are the dead awakening.
Yeah.
It is very, very slow. It is very, like, meditative, and it isn't really about combating the zombies. I think that
it's not about handling them physically. It's about
it's about handling them
mentally
and philosophically, and it's more so about handling the idea of death internally and what death means for us as humans, and how we're supposed to process the idea of death not being finite, and what that does to our psyche. But it isn't trying to be exciting in any way. It is very content with just being the slow kind of meditative piece, which is very much something that's built for me. I have a Chantal Akerman box set sitting back here. She's probably my favorite director. Jean Dielman is my favorite movie ever. I like things that are very slow and meditative, but also, like, that just isn't going to work for everybody, and I understand why.
I mean, slow and meditative, in my mind, with this film, is kind of just synonymous with, like, rambling and a little bit pretentious. I did find it to be, well, but I did find it to be, I think rambling is a good word to describe it. It's sort of building up a lot of ideas, and, like, some of the ideas are interesting. Not all of them are quite as interesting as, like, to warrant being explored necessarily. I don't think, or at least in such depth. But some of the ideas are interesting, but they don't really go anywhere, is the problem for me. In this film, it doesn't even feel like it's building to anything necessarily. And I don't think that was ever the intention. But when you're watching a film and it's not really building to anything and it doesn't really go anywhere, it just becomes, for me, a bit tedious and a bit tiresome to get through. I thought Renate Reinsve was very good. And I thought, all the performances did sell you on the sort of realities of this situation. But I don't think they were given material that really aided them and allowed them to flourish and develop. I think, like, just on the performance back alone was where a lot of the film's quality came from. And I do think it did establish a nice tone throughout. But I don't think it was an aid of anything. I don't think there was really much intent behind the stuff going on. So I kind of just felt a bit cold to the film.
That's fair. I mean, but I do think that a lot of what you're describing is what the film wants to do. Like, I think that it would be very hard to watch this film and come away from it thinking that this film, like, it felt like it was misguided and that it didn't do what it was intending. And I really just think it comes down to if this is something that you think that you will engage with, which is, again, a hyper personal and completely subjective to each individual and how their brain functions thing. Like, it's just, there's no correct opinion on it. It's just a matter of whether that connects with you. I personally, I am very okay with films like this, and like that films that almost just feel like a guided thought exercise, where it's just like a marriage of, like, visuals and sound that can just take me on through these philosophical ideas.
Yeah.
Like,
whereas
I really enjoy those.
Yeah.
But
whereas I guess I think in giving you this premise that should be inherently built in with like emotion, I didn't feel it ever. I didn't feel anything really towards this film, and that's why I said that's why it left me cold. I don't think it ever did the legwork to get you there. And as you say, this was not the point of the film. The film was never trying to do the legwork.
I think metatextually, it's very interesting to examine like why we are feeling cold from this, like why when death is presented in this way, we do not feel towards it as we normally do. Why do we feel differently about death in this manner? And I feel like that is then metatextually almost like then engaging with how the characters are feeling about death.
A part of the film, or do you think? I think that's reading a little too much into what I don't think the film was actually going.
But I don't. Does that matter though? Like, does it matter?
Because I don't think it's doing the legwork in terms of those are not the ideas it's exploring. It is exploring a lot of ideas, and it is going into depth in a lot of ideas. That is not.
I think it is. I think it's really exploring how we perceive death. Like, I think that's like one of the primary things it's looking into.
Yeah, but you think the cold performances aid that? I disagree. I don't know. I think you could have got more. You could have been more connected with what was going on, and these ideas would have been easier to sort of wash over you, and you sort of get it actively engaged with these ideas. And I think that's what the film was trying to do. It's trying to actively engage you in these conversations and in these thoughts. And I don't think it ever enables you to do that, I guess.
I think it's interesting to challenge the audience as a part of the film in a way, like to like it becomes a challenge for the audience. Like I don't know, which this comes into the idea of like Jean Dielman is like an endurance test, and like how the audience engages with it plays directly into the themes of the film. And like
I don't know if it does quite as tightly as Jean Dielman. Like I can see.
Oh no, I think that this isn't. I think that Jean Dielman is the greatest film ever made.
But I think in going for that sort of thing, I think it misses the mark. It misses the mark.
Whereas I still think like
to connect.
It isn't like I keep bringing up Jean Dielman just because that's a good reference point for like slow, tedious cinema that like I personally think Jean Dielman, like, it's my favorite film ever. I love Jean Dielman. This isn't Jean Dielman. It isn't anywhere close to the quality of Jean Dielman. Which I think even you would disagree with as someone who doesn't love Jean Dielman.
Yeah,
like,
no, 100%.
But like I just like kind of a reference point. I think that it is doing similar things, and while I don't think it is like perfect in that regards, that shouldn't be plural. In that regard, I do think that it does get there, at least for me. Like it worked for me. I think it got everywhere emotionally and philosophically where it wanted to with me.
Whereas I guess I'm saying that with films like John, it's provable that this does work and this can work in this style of but I do think this one misses the mark because the story and what was going on didn't warrant this distinct lack of connection I had to it. I don't think it aided the ideas being explored.
Which is fair. But, and like I don't think we're saying that it's a binary thing of like it can only be a good way of doing it and a bad way of doing it.
Yeah, whereas I do think this was a bad way of doing it in many regards, but it's not like it's not all bad. There's still qualities to it. As I said, I think the performances are quite good, and I do think if you are just trying to watch a film for tone and for an atmosphere, it works in that regard.
Which I love. I mean, I'm also a big Glazer fan. Like, I'm a massive fan of Jonathan Glazer, and a lot of his films are tonal exercises, right?
Yeah.
And I think in a very similar way, it functions well as a tonal exercise. So if you feel like you have similar taste to me, then you'll probably like this. If you feel like you have similar taste to Thomas, it probably won't be free. But either is okay. I think regardless, like nobody will deny that like Renate Reinsve, fantastic. And like it does, like, the tone, it's there. Like it establishes tone and atmosphere, whether you think it works or not.
Yeah.
Debatable, divisive. But as far as ratings, I'm leaning with an 8 out of 10. This is one of my favorites at the festival, to be honest.
I'd be looking at probably a 4. Probably a 4 for this one.
I think this is the most we disagreed about a movie.
Rob Peace? I don't know how low you're giving that.
I was more positive on it than this.
Yeah, probably this one. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So anyways, that was our review of Handling the Undead. Stay tuned for plenty more reviews coming from Sundance because we saw a lot. Anyways, thank you everybody for watching, and until next time, stay safe.